My name is Zenedina Olivares, and I will be discussing the modernization of city-owned elevators. I am a parking attendant with the Municipal Development Parking Division, and this is my final presentation. Executive Summary. The Municipal Development Parking Division has 13 elevators currently within our inventory. All elevators are within 20 to 60 years of age and have not gotten much needed mechanical updates or aesthetically pleasing equipment. Through networking and research, I found that these elevators have only been serviced when they become inoperable. New parts would be bought to solve the current problem, but never replaced in its entirety. The elevators have been low priority for upgrades, and since they are in constant use, they are fixed with the fastest means possible and sometimes improper equipment. Currently, to make any changes within the department, it will have to go through the chain of command and then decided if it's deemed worthy of prioritizing. It is a good process, but it tends to bottleneck when it reaches the parking manager going towards upper management. Reason behind this is we in the parking division are going through a huge transitional phase. So there are many projects that are going on at a time and one manager in charge of it all. They are the parking manager, project manager, and any other type of manager that we might need. My solution would be to maybe assign a project manager to specific projects. This will increase productivity when dealing with said projects, and it will entice or it would encourage the employee or coworkers to go above and beyond. Project objective. This project is needed to create and sustain a safer environment for those using our parking structures. Through the parking division transitional stage, I decided to take control and focus solely on its needs because during my research, I found that my supervisors were having trouble coming to a consensus with TK elevator representatives. Our structures see many people going through different stages in their life with different backgrounds and different physical needs and abilities. It is our job to ensure that they can guide themselves within our garage with ease. The elevators play a big role in allowing our handicapable patrons to park on every level of our structure and have a means of safely coming and going. Updating and upgrading the mechanical portion of these elevators will guarantee less work for TK Elevators technician and hopefully a better system in notifying us when our elevators are down in all elevators, not just a few. The aesthetic portion will lower 311 complaints and minimize the vandalism, which will also lower the cost of repairs to the elevators. A 5-year plan is in updating and upgrading the mechanical portion will be created to ensure important components will be addressed and the priority in which they will be addressed. Project solution. The proposed solution will be determined if we can fix the elevators in their entirety or if we do not have the fund, which we don't. We will upgrade and update the mechanical portion of our elevators and lastly find unique to their respective garages and aesthetically pleasing cab interiors for each elevator. The benefits of this project are the lowered risk of lawsuits due to elevator malfunctions and possible entrapments, lower the cost of repairs due to vandalism and improper care. It will also encourage guests to use elevators with aesthetically pleasing views. Also, we may be able to sell advertising space within the elevators to generate more income for the department. By modernizing the elevators, we have the potential of not only saving money for the department by lowering billable repair costs, but also potentially generating revenue. Project details. My scope of work is my job would be to coordinate meetings, prepare elevator locations for upgrades, monitor technicians' work performance, and act as liaison between TK Elevators and our department fiscal officer. project success criteria. We had 4 different projects that were to be done this fiscal year. It was the replacement of the shutoff valves at Civic Underground, installation of anti-vandalism buttons on the west and east side of the elevators at Acropolis, and then installation of tank heaters for both east and west elevators at 5th and Copper. And lastly was going to be the new alarm battery for Arnold Elevator. The only measure of project success in my eyes was that they actually do the work, which is mostly installing, and that they notify me when they're there to start the job and when they're there to when the job's completed. The project had many constraints. To begin with, a lot of time constraints and proposal changes in the beginning of the project. When it came to TK elevator technicians beginning the work, we had many issues on how both the city and ThyssenKrupp handle their employees, who they should contact when working on an elevator, and the amount of notice that should be given before working on the elevators. There was a huge lack of communication when it came to finishing work. Later on, my researchers became absent, mostly due to the transitional phase of our department and that my department's going through. The changes in my schedule, which went from mornings to graveyard, it limited what I could do and the resources I had on hand. During the design phase, I searched my department for an area of opportunity that I wanted to see changed. The parking division was transitioning into a modern high-tech environment at the time, so it left me limited to what I needed to fix. It doesn't not necessarily limited to what I needed to fix, more of so many projects were being done at one time that I didn't want to impose on someone else's work. After discussing it with it and gaining many resources, I discovered that our elevators and the vendors that worked with them were a bit on the difficult side, and with my supervisors already working on other projects, I decided to take on the mantle of modernizing the parking division's 13 elevators. I went back to my resources and gathered all I could about the history of the elevators and their current problems. I spoke to Director Montoya about the information I gathered and my idea, and he agreed to let me take control. He also set his expectations for how he wished we modernized the elevators. During the measure phase, I was tasked with gathering data that would benefit the project we were working on. This seemed a bit difficult for me since at the time I couldn't think of what data would be beneficial in determining how we handled elevator operations. Even seeking help from resources, though they gave great ideas, didn't seem to fit. So my project went stagnant. During one of my meetings with TKE and Parking Vision Kaiser, the topic of the customer portal and Max services came up, and they explained we would be able to see all the work that had been done to the elevators within the last 2 years, or 24 months. This for me meant answering questions such as, how often are the elevators malfunctioning? Were there any entrapments? And if so, where? Which elevator sees more billable repairs? How often are technicians servicing these elevators? Most importantly, the data I collected let me know which elevators would be priority for our future upgrades. While reviewing the data that was collected, I determined that Gold and 5th and Copper, which see high foot traffic, also has the highest amount of reported vandalism repair. Both elevators at the Gold parking structure are constantly being serviced by elevator technicians due to malfunctions in electrical system or in their cab. Acropolis East elevator, the condo side, has had cases of entrapment, so should be top priority when updates and upgrades occur. 5th and Copper has seen the most amount of preventative maintenance, and I'm air quoting this, than any other garage. I would have to touch bases with TK representative and determine what they consider preventative maintenance, because the data isn't clear on that. The analyze phase. During this phase, I analyzed all the information I collected up until this point. I asked my coworkers why they felt the elevators were low priority, and they gave potential reasons. They decided that management, materials, maintenance, and environment were big factors in the contribution of the priority of the elevators. I was then tasked to ask why, 5 times, as to come to a proper root cause. I decided to ask my supervisors, why have the elevators been such low priority? My first interviewee's root cause came to the fact that we were attached to city security 2 years ago and most of the budget went to them. In quoting, because we had little security, so we were paying a lot of overtime. My second interviewee's root cause came to the department's prioritizing what the community wanted over what the elevators needed. And I quote, because of all the 311 complaints about the aesthetics of the garage, and I quote, my last interviewee's root cause was staying in compliance with ADA regulations. Why? And I quote, to avoid fines. End quote. When analyzing the root cause, I was baffled because they were all so different, yet coincided with one another so well. Under previous management, we shared a budget with city security, but because we were such short-staffed, we paid overtime for the security we did have, depleting our budget. When choosing what we were to update, management at the time decided to give the community what they wanted. In this case, aesthetics within the garage instead of the mechanics that make navigating the garage easier. Since the budget was close to non-existent, the division couldn't afford to close the elevators completely down and risk getting fined for non-compliance. 2 years ago, city security separated from the rest of the parking and received a separate budget, and we received new management. But since our division consists of administration, meters, enforcement, parking, and maintenance, we have much to catch up on. Improve phase. My improve phase seemed to have already been implemented while parking is going through its transition into modern tech society. I created a brainstorming map and came to the same conclusion while under different management guidance, we were unable to properly update and upgrade the basics of needs. With the separation of city security 2 years ago, we were left with a large amount of budget for upgrades. We will have to separate it among the other parts of the division slowly through the years to ensure that we can all have our upgrades and new uniforms and new vehicles and upgrades to the elevators. I recreated the as-is map with one addition. I noticed that when possible projects were available, it all goes through our parking manager, and with so much changing happening, some projects become lost or placed on the back burner. To alleviate this, I added a step from the parking manager to project manager for said project. The project manager will be chosen by the parking manager for the specific project. This will allow the project manager to become intimate with the process of making this upgrade, update, or change. It will help create leadership skills within the project manager in gathering their own resources, creating their team, and coordinating meetings. It will increase project success in having one person have complete focus on a particular project. I am a great example of how this simple solution can increase productivity when dealing with city opportunities. When working with this particular project with the elevators, I had open schedules for meeting. So as soon as someone became available, at least one of my resources, I was the first one to be present. I can be at all locations if work is being done to a specific elevator or a specific project. And me being solely focused on the task at hand made it so that I was able to finish this whole process before the year ended. And I'm very proud of that. I believe the parking division transitional phase will be a perfect time to implement the solution. During the control phase, a control plan report was created to help those who will work on their own projects or hopefully become project managers of their own opportunity. It details the process step that was taken, what I was able to control within the project, how I was able to control said item, who would be responsible for implementing this step, the percentage of their specification limits, and the response plan, and how I particularly handled that situation. This report is subject to change, and I hope it guides someone to find their solution. And I hope they also update it, because if someone else can take the mantle and maybe put a different perspective, and we can perfect how we go about this particular process. This year's expenses ended up totaling $13,374 with 76 cents. And for future budgets, I kind of estimate, rough estimation of $60,000 a year until modernization is complete, and that is 10,000 per garage. And this is just for this fiscal year. It might change next fiscal year depending on if certain garages get better customizations or upgrades and they don't need that much in the budget, or if one of the elevators is gonna go above budget the next year. It's just so many factors at this point. The team project. My project sponsor will continue to be Director Montoyo. He's vocal and visible champion for the project, validates goals and objectives, and provides oversight. And project manager is myself. I'm responsible for the completion of the project, develops the project plan, identifies resources and requirements. My steering committee will consist of Jeremy Kaiser, Tracy Millman, and Steve Ryle. They'll provide assistance in resolving issues beyond my jurisdiction. My team members will be Cristina Ribeiro, Maria Griego, Anthony Tijerina, and it will no longer be Anitra Jex, and she left us. And they were there to provide support, and anything that I needed them to do, they would always help me with. And of course, our stakeholders will continue to be TKE, or ThyssenKrupp, key provider of requirements and recipients of project deliverable and associated benefits. Deliverable will directly enhance the stakeholders' business processes and environment. The project schedule, it started off in January with the walkthrough with TKE Representative Cody Adams. I was not particularly present for this one, but Anitra Jex, whom I kind of took over, she informed me. I was there for the initial meeting with TKE, and that's where they kind of gave us their capital plan for all the elevators and the first set of proposals, to which we chose which ones that we were wanting to actually do. They sent a second round. They had to fix a couple of the totals on some of the proposals that they had given us. We decided that it was still too much, and we went with Kone kind of to weigh our options. But of course, we came back to TK elevators. They gave us new proposals. We accepted all of them, and we ended up continuing our service agreement with TK for the fiscal year of 22. But through everything that had been done, I'm proud to say that, you know, I have we have completed all 4 projects when it came to the shutoff valves at Civic, when it came to tank heaters at Copper, the vandalism buttons at Acropolis, and the battery for Arnold. It was all completed before the time frame that I had placed, and I'm very proud to say that. Project risks and controls. I didn't really feel like I had that many risks. I kind of felt the risks were more on TK technicians maybe making a mistake and having to go back and repair that, or probably my, I guess, only fear that I actually had was maybe having an iceberg project, which is like we they go in to fix one thing and it kind of unravels and it becomes too much and it's more than what the budget will allot. So that was my only fear, the only risk that I felt we had. And the control plan report is how I handled every situation, uh, how I handled it, whether it was implemented into the project or it came out of the project being output. The control method, which is like feedback, and then responsibility and who it was, which majority I've noticed that was mine. uh, spe- Specification limitations, which is just like how much of it, what percentage is your responsibility, and of course 100% on a lot of these, and then a detailed account of my response plan to all these scenarios. Suggested solution. My changes to the as is map was a small and simple solution for stagnant projects. Due to many projects being taken place within the department, it will minimize the workload that falls on one specific person and help create and build leadership skills for whomever takes the mantle of project manager for that specific project. When the division was under different guidance, it experienced all these projects, and since their sole focus was security, the rest of the division suffered, and modernization for all parking was placed on the back burner. If we are to continue the modernization of this department's elevators, we are looking to spend a max of $60,000 a year until modernization is complete. That is not always to be the case. If you refer to the budget section of my presentation, you will see that this fiscal year we spent a max of $13,374.76 for repairs done to the elevators. My team and I will make sure these modernizations being done will benefit the divisions immensely. My project sponsor continuing to be Director Montoya. I will continue to be the project manager. And Parking Division Manager Kaiser, Tracy Millman, and Steve Rael will continue being my steering committee. Cristina Riviero, Maria Griego, Anthony Tijerina as my team members, and TKE will continue being stakeholders. Through this year, we have made a lot of progress, not only in starting the process of fixing the mechanical portion of the elevators, but in creating a relationship with our vendors and seeing how they work and finding ways to make everyone happy. If you refer to my time frame section of my presentation, you will see everything that has been done up until this point and what is yet to come. My plan is to touch bases with Cristina Riviero and determine the best course of action for this up and coming fiscal year regarding mechanical work being done to the elevators. I hope knowing what I know will cause less setbacks in future renovations. And this is my last project charter. It has been completed, but I will start a new one starting next fiscal year. Thank you.